What if I told you that this little kart prodigy would become the youngest driver to enter Formula 1 even without a driver's license? Max Verstappen didn't have an easy journey. When he was 7 years old, after losing a race, he was abandoned by his own father, learning the hard way that, for him, winning was the only option. And that's exactly what he did. This is the story of how a child prodigy became a Formula 1 legend.
Do you feel ready for Formula 1?
But sometimes he was too impatient.
Max Verstappen is champion of the world!
Max Emilian Verstappen was born on September 30th, 1997 in Hasselt, Belgium, but his story with motorsport began long before that. His father, Jos Verstappen, was a Formula 1 driver in the 1990s and 2000s, while his mother, Sophie Kumpen, had an impressive career in karting. This meant that even at a very young age, Max already had a great love for racing. To give you an idea, at just 2 years old, he was already playing with miniature versions of the cars his father drove, and of course his favourite games were racing ones. But the most incredible thing is that before even turning 4, Max was already driving his first kart. That was enough for his father to realize that Max was no ordinary child. He was born to be a racing driver. Jos Verstappen was an experienced driver. He knew that this journey would be anything but easy, so he did everything in his power to give his son the best possible training, even if it meant Max had to give up his entire childhood. And from that moment on, Max began going through the most intense training to become a racing driver. While other kids were playing, he was on the track training rigorously alongside his father, who didn't tolerate any mistakes. Thanks to this, at just 7 years old, Max officially started competing in karting, and with undeniable talent, he quickly began accumulating victories. But the routine was intense. The Verstappen family traveled across Europe in a motorhome, competing in races and sleeping in the car to save money. And when they weren't traveling, Jos was tirelessly training his son while also taking care of the kart's preparation and race strategies. There was no room for error, and any distraction was punished severely. Over time, all this pressure pushed the Verstappen family to the limit, to the point where Jos did something extreme. In a shocking incident, after a poor performance in a race, Max's father abandoned him at a gas station. According to him, this would help his son understand just how serious the world of racing was.
I was hard for him, I was strict, but I think because of that, he is who he is, and I think he learned a lot from that. And he arrived here with a lot of confidence, and he was not scared of anything. And I think, that's Max, and that's what he needed. You can ask him the question, and he will say exactly the same. And I think that was good. That was the first basis to arrive, where he is now.
Despite the traumatic experience, his mother picked him up shortly after, but that moment left a lasting mark on Max forever. From that day on, young Verstappen began to absorb every lesson from his father deeply, and at just 16 years old, he was already a racing genius. Even when competing with a car that was far from the fastest, Max always found a way to finish first. Oh, and even back then, some traits of the future champion we know today were already visible, like his aggressive driving style and bold overtakes, but also an extraordinary understanding of his kart and the tracks. While for other kids it was just a game, for Max it was all or nothing, and with that mindset, he dominated every championship in Belgium and the Netherlands. In addition to winning the most important championships in the category, such as the WSK Euro Series in the KF3 class in 2012 and the KF World Championship in 2013. Now he was ready to take the next step in his career, probably the most important one, Formula 3. For most people, it still seemed too early. After all, he had just reached the minimum age for the category, 16 years old. But the Van Amersfoort racing team saw the young man's talent and decided to give him a chance to prove what he was capable of. And of course, Max didn't waste it. With his bold driving style and insane overtakes, he secured 10 victories and 16 podiums in just his debut season. Oh, and guess who was right there battling for the podium with him, making Max furious.
Max, what happened? No, it's just unfair. I'm leading, he wants to pass, he pushed me, I push him back, and after he pushed me off the track. It's not fair, eh?
Thank you, Max. What happened with Max?
Nothing, just an incident on the race.
The most incredible thing is that he carried this rivalry with Leclerc into Formula One, though you already knew how that turned out. That's right, Max was no ordinary driver, and as soon as the top Formula One team saw his talent, they were desperate to sign him. This sparked an intense battle between Mercedes and Red Bull to see who would sign the young talent. Mercedes wanted to take a more traditional approach, guiding Max through the intermediate category step by step before reaching Formula One, but Red Bull had a much bolder idea. They saw that Max was special and were willing to risk everything for him. With that, the team offered Max a contract to debut with Toro Rosso in the 2015 season, and as you can probably guess, he didn't miss the chance. At just 17 years old, Max achieved his dream and became the youngest driver in history to compete in a Formula One race.
Max Verstappen, youngest ever Formula One driver, 17 years of age. You feel ready for this?
I hope so.
Max Verstappen made his debut at the 2015 Australian Grand Prix, and right from the first laps, he showed that he was there to compete on equal terms with the best in the world. Then at the Malaysian Grand Prix, he scored his first points in the category, finishing among the top 10. That was enough to prove that his age wasn't a problem, and that Mercedes had made a big mistake by not signing him. But the craziest part is that even while doing everything right, Verstappen ended up giving the FIA a huge headache, and the reason for it is insane. The fact is that despite competing on equal footing with the veterans of Formula One, it was undeniable that Max was very young. To give you an idea, he didn't even have a driver's license, yet he already had the FIA Super license, which allowed him to compete in Formula One. This led to a drastic rule change, and that's why today, a driver can only obtain a Super license starting at 18 years old. But the biggest turning point in Max's career came at the start of the 2016 season. That year, his life changed completely. Red Bull, dissatisfied with Daniel Kvyat's performance, decided to promote Verstappen to the main team just before the Spanish Grand Prix. It was an instant controversy. Most experts questioned whether he was ready to drive for a top team and handled the pressure. But if there was one thing Max was used to, it was the pressure of racing. After all, it had been part of his life since childhood. That's why it didn't take long for him to silence all the doubts. On the very first lap of the Spanish Grand Prix, a crash between both Mercedes cars opened the door for a battle for victory. With impressive maturity, Max managed his tyres, withstood the pressure from Kimi Raikkonen in the final laps, and crossed the finish line in first place.
Max Verstappen, you are a race winner. What a debut, fantastic.
With that, Max Verstappen became the youngest driver in history to win a Formula One Grand Prix at just 18 years old. But his victory in Spain wasn't just a record, it was a glimpse of what was to come. Throughout the rest of the season, he continued to impress everyone, combining speed with an aggressive driving style. Unfortunately, at that time, Red Bull still didn't have a car capable of competing head-to-head with Mercedes, which continued to dominate the championship. Even so, he took every opportunity to challenge the favourites and secure podium finishes. A great example of this was the 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix, where, under heavy rain, Max delivered one of the most impressive performances in history. To give you an idea, after a botched pit stop, he dropped to 16th place. That's when he began an incredible comeback, overtaking multiple drivers and finishing third.
Well done, mate. Excellent. Okay. Well done, Max. So.
And the following year was no different. In 2017 and 2018, Max continued to dominate on the track, but there was a problem. Despite Verstappen's undeniable talent, Red Bull's car simply wasn't good enough to keep up with his performance. And until that changed, he would remain far from achieving his dream. But then, Red Bull made a decision that changed Max's life forever. In 2019, the team switched to Honda engines, which significantly improved the car's performance and made Max a real title contender. He won important races, such as in Austria and Germany, and finished the season in third place in the championship ahead of both Ferrari drivers. By this point, his talent was so undeniable that no one saw him as just a promising young driver anymore. This became even clearer in 2020 when he once again secured third place in the World Championship. Now, Max Verstappen was one of the biggest names in Formula One, and only one thing was missing for his dream to be complete.
Well, in the future, of course, I hope to become a world champion, because that's also a dream.
And man, he was willing to fight tooth and nail for it. But there was one problem: Lewis Hamilton with Mercedes.
Stunning drive. It's Lewis Hamilton, champion of the world in 2014. It's It's Lewis Hamilton that wins the Australian Grand Prix in 2015 for Lewis Hamilton. Here in Bahrain for Lewis Hamilton, the championship leader, to win his 4th Canadian Grand Prix. It's Hamilton who wins here at Spa, back winning again at Spa.
With Red Bull and Honda finally building a car capable of challenging Mercedes, the 2021 season would be, by far, the most important of Verstappen's career. For the first time since the start of the hybrid era, Mercedes faced a real threat to its dominance, and it wasn't just Mercedes that was under threat. Even 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton was feeling the pressure. And the reason for that is simply insane. From the very start of the season, Verstappen was dominating the races. This intensified the rivalry with Hamilton and the British Grand Prix in Silverstone. The two drivers created one of the most unbelievable moments in Formula One history. On the first lap, Hamilton attempted an aggressive overtake at Copse Corner, one of the fastest and most dangerous turns on the circuit. As a result, the cars made contact, and Verstappen was sent crashing violently into the tyre barrier at over 155 miles per hour. The impact was brutal, leaving everyone in shock and desperation. Thankfully, despite the scare, Verstappen walked away unscathed, but his rivalry with Hamilton was far from over. The British driver received only a light penalty, and since he won the race, he must have thought it was worth it. But what happened at the Italian Grand Prix was much worse. The two collided again, with Verstappen's car actually passing over Hamilton's head. Thank God both drivers emerged unscathed, but it made it clear just how out of control things had become. Even after that, the tension between them only increased, and the on-track battles grew more and more aggressive. Verstappen shone in races like the Mexican and United States Grand Prix, while Hamilton responded with impressive performances in Brazil and Qatar. The battle continued all the way to the final race of the championship, where the unbelievable happened. When they arrived in Abu Dhabi for the final round of the season, Verstappen and Hamilton were tied on points, and the champion would be decided in that race. Verstappen started on pole position, but unfortunately for him, Hamilton took the lead right at the start, and it seemed like his victory was guaranteed. But as you probably know, Formula One is full of surprises. Just a few laps from the end, an accident involving Nicolas Latifi brought out the safety car. Seeing this, Red Bull immediately called Verstappen into the pits to change to fresh tyres, while Hamilton stayed on worn tyres. What happened next went down in history as one of the most insane moments in motorsport. The race direction decided that only a few lapped cars would unlap themselves before the restart, which left Verstappen literally behind Hamilton for the final lap. With his fresher, better conditioned tyres, Max made the decisive overtake of his career, crossing the finish line as the 2021 Formula One World Champion.
Far enough back, he's going to make the lunge down the inside. Hamilton sees it coming. It's a late lunge by Verstappen, who takes the lead of the race. Verstappen now snatches the championship trophy from Lewis Hamilton, who's trying to fight back. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world. Oh my Lord, Max! Oh my God! Yes! Oh my God!
Finally, Verstappen achieved his long-awaited title. That same week, Mercedes protested the decision of the race officials and even took the case to court, but there was no changing it. The FIA upheld the result. Verstappen was officially the world champion. With this, Max Verstappen not only confirmed his exceptional talent, but also solidified his name among the greats in Formula One history. However, this was far from the end of his journey. If the previous season was marked by an epic duel against Lewis Hamilton, the following years saw an even stronger Red Bull and an even more unbeatable Verstappen. The introduction of the new aerodynamic regulations in 2022 brought significant changes to Formula One. While some teams struggled to adapt, Red Bull and Honda seized the opportunity to build an extremely competitive car. With equipment that matched his talent, Max did exactly what was expected of him. He won, and he won in dominant fashion. In the 2022 season, Verstappen controlled the championship from start to finish, securing victory after victory and clinching his second World Championship with plenty of time to spare.
It's wheel to wheel. Verstappen is ahead. Max Verstappen takes the lead. This is absolutely epic.
Yes, that was nice.
In 2023, this superiority went even further. His ability to manage tyres, maintain pace under pressure, and extract the maximum from the car in any condition made him an almost impossible opponent to defeat.
Max Verstappen dominates the Bahrain Grand Prix and takes victory at the season opener of 2023.
Thank you guys. That's exactly the start to the season we wanted and needed.
He did it in 22, he's going to do it in 23, and it's going to be 9 consecutive race victories for Max Verstappen.
And 2024 couldn't have been any different. Now there are no doubts that little boy who once dreamed of becoming a driver was destined to be the best. But do you think he can surpass Hamilton and Schumacher and become the driver with the most titles in Formula One? I believe there's a chance, but even if he doesn't, one thing is certain: Max Verstappen has already made his mark in the history of Formula One.
When I see him there, he's still the same, let's say, boy how he was 10 years ago. In private, I don't see anything different than he is. But on a track like this, he's definitely a man, and he knows what he's doing, and that's what I like.